Okay, good afternoon everybody. It's Loulou James here with the Buttafly, and we are workshopping Dandasana. So straight over to the mat. This is one of those poses that you think is straightforward. So Dandasana, Danda meaning staff in Sanskrit, and so when we think of a staff we think of a straight rod. So in this case we're looking at straight backs and ideally straight legs. But it was one of those things that the more I looked at it, the more intriguing it becomes. Now you can see it is a really hot day here. It must be about 34 degrees in here. It feels very hot, and so I'm actually just letting myself slouch. And you can see how my back is rounding where it is rounding. So that means that I have lost the natural alignment through the spine here. My low back, what we call the lumbar spine, should have a nice backward facing curve. Instead it's in a forward facing curve. We call this flexion. The middle part of the back, which actually does exhibit in the normal a forward facing curve, it's called a kyphosis, but it shouldn't be as rounded as this, especially in me because I'm very flat in my thoracic spine. And then we're looking for the natural backward facing curve at the neck, also called a lordosis. So when I slouch like this, you can see that it really puts my neck out, it puts the middle part of my back out, it puts my low back out. And this is absolutely what we want to avoid in staff pose, in sitting on the floor with our legs out straight. Now it may or it may not help by bringing the knees up. Yes, I can get a little bit more alignment out of there, but I don't know if you can see, but actually my low back is still actually fairly flat. And how can we help get that curve in the low back in the way that we know it is capable of doing? Now it's more complicated than you might think, because it is to do with the relation that is happening between the knees, the hips, the pelvis and the lumbar spine. So let's just have a look at it working from the top down. So if you let your back slump, as I am doing now, to just really be giving way to the ease of my body here, what happens is as the lumbar spine goes into flexion, you open out this joint here between the lumbar spine and the triangular bone at the base of the spine, the sacrum. And so what that does is it automatically kind of drags the whole of the pelvis into what we call a posterior pelvic tilt. If you want to look at more of that, then go on to another video that is coming called pelvic tilt. Now let's then have a look from the other end of the body. This is obviously a chopped off thigh here. So let's imagine that we are now bringing the knee up towards the chest. So we are flexing the hip. Now as we do that, there'll come a point where the hip can't move anymore, and if we are to continue that movement, what will happen is again the pelvis rolls back into a posterior pelvic tilt. So all in all, when we are sitting in staff pose, there are reasons why we are dragged into a posterior pelvic tilt when we are with the legs out straight, but equally when we bring the knees up, we may find that it actually increases that posterior pelvic tilt. And of course we have to use a really nice strong action in the upper body to bring us into a nice alignment there. But can you again notice, here I am still fairly flat in the low back. What can we do? Well, we can sit on something to lift us a little bit. Now if I sit on a regular block here, which just has obviously a flat surface, you will see that I have a little bit of extra height. It definitely is easier for me to sit here. But what I'm doing is I'm actually not getting that neutral pelvis position that I want. In order to achieve that, I would have to sit on an inclined surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tuck a wedge underneath that. So there we are. the inclined surface is now actually taking me onto the front of the sit bones. So let's have a look at the sit bones here. All right, this is like more the front of the sit bones here. And if we concentrate on sitting on this bit, then we will definitely go to sit in more of a neutral. And if we roll onto the back of the sit bones here, then we will definitely be sitting more in a posterior pelvic tilt. So we obviously don't want to sit too far on the front because we don't want to go into an excessive anterior pelvic tilt either. We just want to be in neutral. So I think you can probably see that sitting on that inclined surface is helping. Now, of course, I kind of got a little bit tired of fiddling around with a whole load of blocks, and actually the angle is not quite right on there, and I still don't like all of the buttock flesh being bunched up around the tailbone. So this is why I've got the Buttafly to sit on, and you can see that I've got that inclined surface there. It's much easier for me to come into a nice straight back, and then we can action the legs there. I still don't have a normal backward facing curve in the lumbar spine. Let's have a look. If we go on to 4-point kneeling and we cat and cow, you can see how much available range there I've got to come into a lumbar lordosis. All right, so I'm exaggerating it there now, so I'm in a little bit in an anterior pelvic tilt and an over lordosis, but my staff pose was looking more like that. So actually that's quite flat. I haven't got that natural lordosis. Now there's another way that we can achieve this, and it's actually by bringing the legs up wherever we need to. The knees not coming too high to the chest, which is going to round the pelvis into a posterior pelvic tilt and taking the sacrum with it and dragging us into a lumbar spine flexion. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to position my legs in such a way that I feel that I've got, can you see that coming in there now? Can you see that lovely little bit of normal lordosis that I have coming in the low back? Now, I'm looking for action through the upper body, and it really is the icing on the cake when you can put some action into the lower body. If I just go to push my legs and I've got nothing there, I can do it, but if I'm meeting resistance in the back line of the body, so the back of the whole of the back, from the feet, from the toes, all the way up the back of the legs, through the buttocks, and then all the way up over the temple and onto the brow here. If I've got nothing to push into, it's actually more difficult to get that action. Now look what happens to my posture when I bring in, again, it needs to be a wedge here because just going onto a flat block, I don't have the same purchase. Now look what happens when I push my legs into that. Can you see? I'm actually not even trying to sit up straight there, but literally just by pushing my legs against the Buttafly, you'll see automatically my toes are coming into a better position, and there's lots of very strong activity which is spilling over into the lumbar spine. The thighs are working really hard here to push the backs of the thighs into the Buttafly. And I'm hoping that you will see that I've actually got probably a better alignment there than actually even when I sat on a block here. Now it may well be that this is just my body. So there are a couple of different things there that I would like to suggest that these might work for you to go away and try. There will never be one thing that fits everybody. There'll be not one cue and not one prop. So it's really a case of experimenting and trying for yourself. Now you can also use a folded up blanket. In many ways I actually prefer this to a block because it means that when I sit on it, if I get my pelvis into a nice position, then the blanket automatically comes into a wedge. Now, there's just one more thing that I think can work really well when we're trying to work with staff pose here, and that is lying with the legs up the wall. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to get my bottom very close to the wall here, and then I'm going to swing my legs up the wall, just wiggle my bottom a little bit closer so that the sit bones are actually touching the wall. I'm not going to action my legs there just for a moment. What I'm going to do is make sure that my shoulder blades are nicely tucked under the body, and then I'm going to do this little scooping motion with the arms, which helps this external rotation that happens when I do this. The external rotation of the upper arm helps to widen me out across the collarbone. And then you'll notice that I just straightened the legs without even really thinking about it. Now I can actually feel my low back now on the floor. So that means that with the best will in the world, I'm actually being taken out of the naturally backward facing curve in my lumbar spine. And in order to bring that curve in, I'm going to have to bring my knees into this flexion here. And this is a similar position to how I was when I was in sitting and I put the butterfly underneath my thighs to action my thighs. So I'm going to come up nice and slowly. It's a really hot day. I'm finding it's making me a little bit dizzy, all this heat. So a couple of different things to work on. Dandasana is a fantastic pose. It's really, really strengthening, and it can feel really satisfying to get it right. So use whatever props you need. You might want to just revisit some of the terminology. You can have a look at some of the descriptions that I've got on my website. You just follow the link underneath this video here. So we're looking at flexion, we're looking at lordosis, kyphosis, and what was the other one? Posterior and anterior pelvic tilt. So hopefully they are just enough to get you really started with this and feeling confident to explore in your own body. So thank you very much for being with me today. And do you know what? I think I'm going to go and have an ice cream. So namaste. See you next time.